mysterious entity. As the days turned into weeks, she discovered a hidden treasure within the depths of a mystical cave. Faced with challenges, puzzles, and the wrath of ancient guardians, she persevered to claim the ultimate reward. However, the newfound wealth brought her no joy, as it came at the cost of her sanity and the peace of her home. Despite returning to her village with the riches, she could never find solace within herself. The weight of her actions, the burden of guilt, and the haunting memories continued to torment her until her last breath. He only wanted SHOPYNONA to fulfill his physical needs. She didn't even want him to come near her. In the early days of marriage, her husband, who scared her and fulfilled his needs. As time went on, he used to forcefully sleep with her. This was a great ordeal for SHOPYNONA, and sleeping with a man who was drunk and unconscious and had no mouth was a very disgusting experience for her. Above all, she was unable to bear the oppressive behavior of a man with a mind distorted by drunkenness and no love. It was during this time that SHOPYNONA became pregnant. It was from her drunken husband. Even in such an environment, neither his drunkenness nor SHOPYNONA's sufferings diminished in any way. Despite carrying the child in her womb, she had to fulfill his oppressive bodily needs. Finally, she made a tough decision and got used to locking the door in her room when he came home. In the first few days, her husband, who had slammed the door of her room and scolded her with obscenities, did something that she did not expect at all. While she was in the room, he molested the maid of the house with no motive. After the incident that day, he searched for her and did not have sexual relations with her. In front of SHOPYNONA's eyes, he continued to force himself on the servant girl and satisfy his physical needs. In the middle of all these events, SHOPYNONA had a strong hatred for the child that came to her womb. She had the feeling that the child was born by force rather than a child born through a good marriage relationship. Because of that, SHOPYNONA, who hated her child very much, did not stop there and hated everyone in that family. As time passed slowly, the time for her delivery came. At the time of her conception, her husband was irresponsibly drunk. Even so, when the midwife comes home, she has delivered the child without anyone, indicating that her arrival was late. SHOPYNONA was already in a very critical condition, and despite all the treatment, SHOPYNONA left this world a few moments after the child was born. SHOPYNONA's mother took the child as they learned about all the troubles her daughter had gone through so far at the funeral. It has been 3 months since SHOPYNONA died. Her husband's elder sister, lived near Aluthka, and she was about to give birth to a child. One day, around 6 in the evening, they heard a number of cries. No one was there. But no one answered. After the she opened the door of the house and saw something completely unexpected. Just ahead of the door stood a woman in a white dress with disheveled hair. Sriyalatha was terrified by this sight as soon as she opened the door. She screamed involuntarily. When she saw the face of the present guest, she became more and more afraid. It was none other than the dead SHOPYNONA. He remembers that the dead soul extended its hands towards him. Immediately, she fell unconscious. Neighbors had hospitalized her, and she even lost her pregnancy due to the severe trauma she experienced. Her life was saved. receiving treatment in the hospital for several weeks. In the middle of a very dangerous situation, SHOPYNONA's revenge on her husband's sister continues till today. SHOPYNONA's spirit did not allow any new child to see the light of day after the children of that family. She acted with such hatred that she destroyed all those children in the womb. At the time of SHOPYNONA's death, her husband's elder brother had a 5-year-old son. Due to the continuous incidents of SHOPYNONA's death, his family moved to Colombo with the main aim of saving their child from these accidents. Time passed slowly. In the pit where SHOPYNONA died, her husband, maid, and her husband's mother also died prematurely. The pit collapsed and overgrown with weeds, and a rumor spread throughout the village that it was a haunted bungalow, because there were many people in the village who heard the voice of a woman screaming in pain from the direction of the house at night. SHOPYNONA's husband's elder brother's child married about 30 years after her death. He worked as a legal advisor in a well-known company, and his wife also held a high position in the same company. After a few years of marriage, she became pregnant. One day, after about 6 months, she stayed at home instead of going to work because of bad health. After being sick, she was lying on the bed. Unknowingly, she fell asleep and she had a dream. That dream is like a series of real events. Her husband suddenly comes home. A woman dressed in white who was near their gate suddenly starts beating him with a stick. Even after Polu fell on the ground, she continued to beat him. Then she laughed hysterically. She saw her husband lying in a pool of blood. Waking up at that moment, she quickly jumped out of bed and quickly opened the door of the house and ran towards the gate. It is to find her husband. Her leg tripped, and she dragged herself down the stone path to the gate. That's all she remembers. She was in the hospital when she regained consciousness. Her first child had died in the womb. Even though 8 years have passed since that incident, they still do not have a child. This is how SHOPYNONA passed on the sufferings she suffered from her husband to his generation and destroyed the generation